Arvind Virmani, as the Chief Economist Advisor in the UPA government, was one of the main brains behind the emergency response measures pressed in by India to minimize the impact of the 2008 global financial crisis on the Indian economy. He is also the one who first floated the idea in the 10th five-year plan document as a replacement for the effete public distribution system for plugging the enormous linkages and high administrative costs of creating numeric ID and a web-based database for monitoring. How much or if at all target beneficiaries are getting from various poverty alleviation programs. His proposal became the basis for UID, Aadhaar and Direct Benefit Transfer Program. In the economic survey for 2008-2009, Dr. Virmani had recommended a comprehensive list of bold reforms which, if undertaken, would catapult India's GDP growth rate to 10%. He holds a doctorate in economics from Harvard University and has served as an executive director at the International Monetary Fund.
Mr. Co-Chair, other friends on the dais, I have known many of them over my 25-year career in government. I met them many times, except the younger ones. The current CA belongs to the next generation, so I only met him when he became CA. So what I'm going to do is focus on the short term, the macro. Everybody is puzzled about the decline in GDP growth and the causes for it. I myself have been working on it since April of this year, and for the last 2 weeks, I've looked at so much data and Excel files that it's kind of bursting out of my head, but I'm not going to give you a technical. I'm going to give you a very general perspective which even a student would comprehend. So I'm going to be very simplistic. I'm not here to give an economics lecture, but I would like to give a flavor of what I think has been happening. So first, we think of, macroeconomics looks at trends, which is the long-term growth which the CA has talked about, and fluctuations in that growth, short-term fluctuations. This is part of an integrated system in the economy, and we study it. But sometimes we need to separate it out to understand the different parts and then put it together. That's why it's very complex. So I'm going to do that right through my talk. I will kind of try to separate it out so you can focus on something and then put it back into it. It's just for the purpose of understanding. The economy, macroeconomy, everything is related. So if you think of everything, you'll never get anywhere. Okay? So the first question to ask is there something special to this current decline in growth? I think as many people have pointed out, including this quarter 2, which is expected, I have on record as saying between 4 and 4.5%, will mean that we have 6 consecutive quarters of GDP growth decline. Now, when I look back, and as I said, I've been looking at all kinds of data for the last 2 weeks, what you find is that in the recent past, we've only had 4 quarters of consecutive decline. So if you look at it from that perspective, there is something special, okay? Now, how would I understand what has been going on? As I said, I'm going to simplify it, and the story I'm going to tell is about the white and the black economy. Now again, like I said, everything is kind of interrelated, okay? But think of it as, let's say, 2 different towns, okay? There's an economy, there's 2 towns, the black town and the white town. And things are happening in these towns, and there's a lot of linkages, okay? There's rail links, road links, waterways, etc., right? Airways. As I said, it's a way to understand what is happening from my viewpoint. So what I think we have been having since, actually it started in 11, I won't give you the history, but let's say since 2014, is that you have had an institutional reform approach which has been pressing on the black economy, okay? So you have a stick. I can list these out, but as I said, I have limited time. I guess I've got 15 minutes, is it? Oh, it's there. It's already running out. I thought it'd be over there. Okay. So you had all these sticks to beat the black economy, and the assumption was that if you beat these people in this black town, they will move over to the white town, and the white economy would boom, right? So black economy, you push down, the white economy rises, and we have a better world, right? We have a better economy, we have a better country, and all the things which go with it. Simultaneously, you've been doing things in this white world, some which provide incentives, some which provide disincentives, right? My view is that the balance was wrong. You have done too much to suppress this, not enough to promote the white economy. In fact, the perception became that you are not doing anything to promote the white economy. So what you had was, instead of the black part of it shifting to the white, you had a collapse of the black economy, so that the overall GDP has declined, okay? As I have 7 minutes, now I'll give you the specifics. So what has been happening? You know the black part, right? There's a whole string of actions, laws against black money, Benami transactions, RERA, demonetization, etc. So I won't go into the details of that, but what else happened? Well, 2 or 3 things which are very, very important. The CE has already told you about. The IBC, the GST, they are all in principle good things, right? But you also had certain increases in surcharges, the last of which, the LTCG, the surcharge which was imposed in the last budget. And basically, they kind of acted as a trigger in, I wouldn't say blowing up, but reducing the growth rate, the confidence, etc. So the solutions are there. One part of the solution we've already had from the finance minister. That was the tax, the corporate income tax, okay, to restore the confidence of the corporate economy. The other parts of it, very briefly, and there are 2 others I should mention, which are on the works. One was this payment. So as part of this collapse, you had a collapse in demand. Demand is linked to monetary policy and the channels of credit. So clearly you got to ease monetary policy and clean up those. I think both those are happening. The finance minister has talked about it. RBI doesn't talk about these things, but both those are beginning to happen. So if they are beginning to happen and enough of it happens, you will get a recovery quicker. The second part is the fiscal one, where the finance minister has already acted on payments part of it. She said we will accelerate all the payments. In my view, we should take this opportunity to completely clear overdues. You know, there's been practice for 50 years that there's always a carryover of debt or overdue payments, which has been going on for 50 years. I think this is an opportunity. We should say we'll make it 0 and take the fiscal hit, okay? Just pay everybody you have to pay, rather than continuing with this practice. And the second part, the corporate disinvestment, the strategic sale, which again is in process. Clearly, the quicker you do it, the better it is. But there are 2 other key elements of the policy which have to be done. One is GST. One of the reasons for this imbalance between the black and the white economy was that GST was too complex. My friend Govind Rao, Dr. Govind Rao here will perhaps tell you more about it. But we have to reform that system. I have heard hundreds of complaints. You know, whenever I talk to small scale people, that is top on their list generally, or number 2. So this is not something which they say just for the sake of saying. It is a confirmation of something we predicted. It's something which one has worked on for 20 years. What kind of a simple GST we need to bring this white economy up instead of just acting as a danda on the black economy. Okay, that's the same problem there. And the second part of the fiscal, which still is, well, it's on the table. CA was a member of the committee for the direct tax code. Now, one of the problems which is coming up is that given the corporate tax reform and the temporary increase in fiscal deficit that it will do, a comprehensive direct tax code reform may add further to that. That is one of the worries and a consideration. My response to that would be that do the structural part. You know, there is a structural part which is essential, which is like reducing the code by half or 3/4. Okay? Do that basic structural reform. The tax rate part of it, or certain things which are separate from it, let's say the surcharges, could be phased out over the next 3 years, 4 years, whatever. So it's a question of coming up with solutions which meet the problem. But that code part, I think, is absolutely essential. It must be done in the next budget. Finally, luckily I'm going to conclude within my time. There is, of course, the set of, so we put the white and black economy back. You also have to put the macro and the long-term trends back, right? So you still need to act on the 4 or 5 things which have been talked about for a long time. Agriculture decontrol, elements of land, labor. CES talked about it. I have not seen the new code. Hopefully, it's in the direction which was hinted at. External reform. I am again, you know, one has seen in the last EODB that the EODB on external has improved. The ranking has improved. But just yesterday, I heard another complaint relating to external trade. So I think there are still gaps in that which need to be fixed. Education and skilling, it doesn't normally come up, but I think it's critical. The quality of education, and again, there is evidence of people who hire people that they just, when they advertise for a job, the ratios are staggering. They say out of 1,000 people who apply, only 10, roughly speaking, have even the basic stuff to be considered for the job. There's a huge lack. I mean, we know about the quality of the basic education. People who are supposed to be in 10th class can't read and write properly. And then there is the job skilling. You know, people think of job skills as some big thing, but the way I think of it, I'll give you an example. In a rural school, the curriculum used should be such cultural production. So it goes together. It is not some big job skill that you have to create. You have to be realistic in your curricula. You have to focus on how the student will be able to think and solve the problems which are all around. So again, this is a different way of thinking. And finally, the key, you know, it's easy to say, reform all the land laws, reform all the labor laws. But in my 25 years of experience, I have found that, and that's a key test of economic advice, is to adapt what is a good policy and a good direction to meet some of the political constraints. And in some sense, if I may say, thank you for your kind words on my award. That is one of the things which I would say I have been unique, you know, is to marry good ideas, good directions with practicality. And that's the key to the success of a government. Thank you.